religion or nationality. It cannot also be confused. There should be a
In this framework, our today's meeting is
not associated with any religion or nationality. It cannot also be confused. There should be a confusion of the challenge of public safety that many countries face. These are different phenomena, and that should not serve as an excuse for interventions at the margin of the international law. Latin America and the Caribbean region made an option since 1968 to become a zone free of nuclear weapons. For almost 40 years, we are a zone of peace and cooperation. The presence of armed forces of the biggest power in the Caribbean Sea is a factor of tension that is incompatible with the Pacific peaceful vocation of this region. Dear friends, in 2 weeks we will be gathered in New York for the 80th General Assembly of the United Nations. This will be an opportunity for us to speak with one sole voice in the defense of a reinvigorated multilateralism. We should move forward in enhancing the Security Council of the UN, incorporating new permanent and non-permanent members from Latin America, from Africa, and from Asia. Another central gap in the multilateral architecture of today is in the digital field. Without a democratic governance, domination projects that are centered in some companies of some countries will perpetuate themselves. Without digital sovereignty, we will be vulnerable to foreign manipulation. This does not mean to foster a technological isolationism environment, but we should foster the cooperation between ecosystems that have a national base, independent and regulated. The impact of unilateralism in the field of the environment. The developing countries are the ones that are being more impacted by the climate change. COP30 in the city of Beijing will be a moment of truth and science. Besides working for the decarbonization in a planned way of the global economy, we can also use fossil fuels to finance ecological transition. We need a climate governance that is stronger, capable to exercise effective oversight. Brazil invites the BRICS partners to consider first to create a council of climate change at the UN that will network different players, processes, mechanisms that today are fragmented. I'd like to call your attention for the special fund for tropical forests forever that we want to launch at the COP30 with the objective to remunerate the services, the ecosystems that are provided to the planet. The Global South has the conditions to propose another paradigm for development and to refuse a new Cold War. The Indian chairmanship in the future of the BRICS meeting will count with the full support of Brazil to these ideals. The G20 summit under the chairmanship of South Africa will also be an important space for broad dialogue about the possible roads that we can follow for the international order. Unilateralism will never conduct us to reach the achievements of peace, justice, and prosperity that our predecessors designed in 1845. The BRICS is already a new name of defense of multilateralism. Thank you very much, my friends. And now I'd like to give the floor to the President Xi Jinping, who is the President of China.
Your Excellency, President Luiz Inacio Lula da Silva, distinguished colleagues, it is very relevant that is accelerating across the world. Hegemonism, unilateralism, and protectionism are getting more and more rampant. Trade wars and tariff wars waged by some country severely disrupt the world economy and undermine international trade rules. At this critical juncture, BRICS countries, standing at the forefront of the Global South, should act on the BRICS spirit of openness, inclusiveness, and win-win cooperation, jointly defend multilateralism and the multilateral trading system, advance greater BRICS cooperation, and build a community with a shared future for humanity. To this end, I wish to make 3 proposals. First, we should uphold multilateralism to defend international fairness and justice. History tells us that multilateralism is a shared aspiration of the people and the overarching trend of our time. It provides an important underpinning for world peace and development. The Global Governance Initiative that I proposed is aimed at galvanizing joint global action for a more just and equitable global governance system. We should follow the principle of extensive consultation and joint contribution for shared benefit and safeguard the international system with the United Nations at its core and the international order based on international law, so as to cement the foundations of multilateralism. At the same time, we should actively promote greater democracy in international relations and increase the representation and voice of Global South countries. We should improve the global governance system through reform so as to fully mobilize resources from all quarters and tackle more effectively the common challenges for humanity. Second, we should uphold openness and win-win cooperation to safeguard the international economic and trade order. Economic globalization is an irresistible trend of history. Countries cannot thrive without an international environment of open cooperation, and no country can afford to retreat to self-imposed isolation. No matter how the international landscape may evolve, we must stay committed to building an open global economy so as to share opportunities and achieve win-win outcomes in openness. We should uphold the multilateral trading system with the World Trade Organization at its core and oppose all forms of protectionism. We should promote a universally beneficial and inclusive economic globalization, place development at the heart of our international agenda, and ensure that Global South countries participate in international cooperation as equals and sharing the fruits of development. Third, we should uphold solidarity and cooperation to foster synergy for common development. As a Chinese saying goes, it takes a good blacksmith to forge good steel. We can only cope with external challenges more effectively when we manage our own affairs well in the first place. BRICS countries account for nearly half of the world's population, around 30% of global economic output, and 1/5 of global trade. We're also home to major natural resources, big manufacturers, and vast markets. The more closely we work together, the more resilient, resourceful, and effective we are in addressing external risks and challenges. China is ready to work with fellow BRICS countries to implement the Global Development Initiative and advance high-quality Belt and Road cooperation. We should leverage our respective strengths deepen practical cooperation, and make our business, financial, scientific, and technological cooperation more productive, so as to strengthen the foundation, momentum, and impact of greater BRICS cooperation, and deliver more practical benefits to our peoples. President Lula referred to the Ukraine crisis and the conflict in Gaza. I agree with Brazil's position, as I'm sure we are all united on these matters. Distinguished colleagues, strong wind tests the resilience of grass, and fierce fire reveals true gold. As long as we step up to take our responsibilities and look out for each other, the giant ship of BRICS will brave the shifting international tides and sail far and steady. Thank you.
Thank you very much, President Xi Jinping. Now, I would like to give the floor to President El-Sisi, who is the President of the Republic of Egypt. You have the floor, sir.
So much in the name of Almighty God, Excellency President Lula da Silva, President of the Federal Republic of Brazil, Excellencies, heads of states and governments, honorable attendees. At the outset, I extend my sincere thanks and appreciation to my friend, Excellency President Lula da Silva, for his wise leadership and his status assiduous and persistent efforts during the chairmanship of BRICS during this year. It was crowned by the great success of Rio Summit held last May, as well as its significant outcomes. I would like as well to thank His Excellency President da Silva for his invitation to this key meeting for exchanging views at a critical timing. When the world witnesses threatening multilateral global action, conflicts threatening multilateral global action further to the group of principles, rules, and foundation of which the international system has been built since 1945. Today, the international landscape is plunged in flagrant dualism in terms of double standards, blatant violations to the provisions of the international law with extreme indifference and without accountability, in light of systemic impunity and worrying escalation of unilateral conflicts and measures of protectionism. Such degradation undermines the foundations of international peace and security, takes humanity back to chaos, and the absence of law dedicates use of force for will imposition and realization of implicit ill will on the account of legitimacy and justice. Given such regression, it's not surprising to see crises aggravation, conflicts flare up, and war eruption, as well as the perpetration of heinous crimes such as murder and devastation that would remain as an irreversible stigma chasing those whose hands are stained with blood. Such a deteriorating reality has weakened the efficiency of joint international action and restricted states and UN agencies to contend with urgent issues requiring highest level of coordination and collaboration. In this regard, the status of the Security Council is a flagrant example to what the international community has become as crippled and regressed. This has a direct adverse impact on the state's confidence in the UN system, particularly the poor performance of the very Security Council. Such erosion of credibility drove a number of states to demand comprehensive reform of the modalities of the Council, including an outright call to the cancellation of the veto right. By time, such merit has turned to be a tool for isolating the Council from field reality and leaving it incapable to undertake its pivotal role for dispute resolution and halting wars. even though it is the UN entity enshrined with keeping international peace and security. In addition to the above, the fallout of this worsened international position has undermined the global economy growth rates and gains, threatening them with collapse. Today, the world is going through a noticeable slowdown in the economic growth rates and a regression in the international trade traffic and eroded interest in development and developmental financing issues. At a time, the developmental financing and digital gap is widened in the developing states. Debt burden is worsened and weakens their capabilities to access concessional finance. In addition to the limited impact of those states on the international financing institutions' actions, hence, rises the importance of BRICS as a prominent international forum, walking steadily through the inculcation of a constructive collaboration among its states, based on the principles of utility and mutual respect, and strengthening multilateral action. In this framework, our today's meeting is given an extraordinary significance. It is an availing opportunity to consultation, views exchange on means of deepening integration and complementarities among our states, coordination of efforts for alleviation of current crises brunt, and reinforcement of the BRICS states' capabilities to effectively contribute to forging much fairer and balanced international regime in face of